Ideas for Impact, a new podcast where innovation meets sustainability head on. Let's take a fresh look at how we do business. Changemakers are innovating solutions to some of the toughest challenges we face in our world. In the process, they are creating their own mark on industry. Our guests are rebels with a cause. They are tearing down barriers, redefining success, and leaving a mark on their industries. Our guests are the disruptors who refuse to settle for business as usual. Join us to unravel the lessons learned behind their failures and their triumphs, and uncover the hidden opportunities for positive change. Co-hosted by me, Joanna Buchkeska-McCumber, and my friend, Deborah Host. Did you know that seaweed grows up to 30 times faster than land plants and absorbs more carbon dioxide per acre than forests? It is one of the most impactful nature-based solutions we have on our planet. And it also has the potential to increase food production and improve ocean ecosystems. At the heart of this work is the team at Cascadia Seaweed, a proud B Corp led by co-founder and CEO Michael Williamson. Their collaborative efforts with farmers and First Nations communities and industry innovators are transforming seaweed into a powerful tool for change. Let's dive into our conversation with Michael about how they're affecting change through seaweed. Hello, Michael. It's so good to have you on the show.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Tell us the story of Cascadia Seaweed. How did this all get started?
Sure. In 2018, I ran across my soon-to-be business partner. We were having a coffee, and both of us had a pause in our late-stage careers. We said, let's do a business. And we came across a study that was done for Vancouver Island that said, amongst the other economic opportunities, seaweed could be a big thing. Despite the fact I'd worked around the ocean for about 4 decades, it's like, seaweed, is that even an industry? And a quick check on Google showed that globally, demand exceeded supply. And the World Bank said in the next 25 years, 10% of the global food mass could come from seaweed. We said, well, those are interesting numbers. Vancouver Island has a long, rich history of aquaculture. There's a lot of clean water, a lot of infrastructure. We said, let's start a seaweed company. So we, in 2019, we formally got registered and incorporated. We had 2 farms in the water by the end of 2019, 2 small farms, 1 hectare each, and away we went. Of course, 2020, when it was time to harvest in March, we were right in the middle of COVID, and one day we were the only 2 folks in the office. We walked out, we got to harvest our seaweed, and we did. So we completed a full cycle without a lot of attention at the time to the market. We wanted to work through the value chain. How do you grow seaweed in the ocean? And we initially mastered that, and then we started a food brand called Cove Ocean Foods, and we brought some folks in with experience in consumer packaged goods. Did that for about a year and a half and realized that it was a tough market for seaweed. It was tough in North America, and it wasn't demanding a lot of seaweed. Because cultivating seaweed in the ocean is good for a lot of reasons, we wanted to find an outlet that would demand a lot of seaweed. So we switched to agricultural products, and now we convert seaweed into high-value crop amendments for soil and plants for large ag. And as of now, we're one of North America's largest ocean cultivators of seaweed, and our products are in market in Canada, the States. We have some export orders, and we're going fairly strongly. So we started as a seaweed company. We've stayed true to our roots, and we found a spot in the market that there's a great product market fit.
I love that because I have some recognition when you say CPG and just like the timeline where you really explored it makes sense to me because it is hard unless you can get quantity and on both sides, the demand and the supply at the price point that you're going to need to be at to make it all work. So moving over to ag just seems like a smart business solution to all of that.
And North Americans don't have a strong palate for seaweed. It's very big in Asia, of course, and there's been some incursions into the North American market with the small snack sheets that you can purchase. But beyond that, putting it in as a wet product or into other food substances, it either doesn't demand a lot of seaweed or it's a hard sell. There are a couple of companies doing quite well at it, but they're few and far between. And for us, we decided that the ag sector, regenerative agriculture, and positive impacts our seaweed products can make was the best fit.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then, so it's you and are you a co-founder? Like, talk a little bit about the business structure and if that's changed at all since you've started, or if it's working. With a lot of the mission-driven businesses that we speak to, one thing that really stands out is these unique organizational structures for a variety of reasons. So I'm curious to hear your end there.
Sure. So we started with three co-founders, Bill Collins, Tony Ethier, and myself, and we all had marine experience and business experience and structural experience. So it was a good team. Put it together, started the company. Unfortunately, Tony Ethier passed away last year. It was obviously very unfortunate, and we miss him incredibly. And Bill and I are still around. I took the position of CEO right off the bat, and Bill took the position of chairman of the board, which played to both of our strengths. Going forward, we've added about another 20 team members with expertise in areas that we just didn't have. For example, legal and accounting and some of the engineering. So today we have a fairly traditional structure where I'm CEO, and there are a number of direct reports for financial and human resources, communication, engineering, and we have science and R&D. And for example, in the science and R&D, we have three folks with PhDs in specialties that are important to us, such as phycology and also the formulation of things like biostimulants, and then ecosystems and fish habitats. These are skills that obviously we don't have, and we've added them to the team. One of the things that's unique about us, and when we started the business, again, I mentioned late stage career, we wanted to bring to the business all the things we hadn't seen in our past and not have in the business things we didn't like when we had in the past. So for example, one thing, I refer to the folks in the company as team members. I really don't like the term employees because we're all in this together as a team. And this is one of the things that keeps folks aligned is people have a voice. Yes, there's a traditional structure and a hierarchy. Yes, I'm the one that makes the final decisions. But the tone that we try to create around the office and in the field is we're all team members and we're all pulling in the same direction. There's another little analogy I use is folks coming to the office on Monday morning, I really wouldn't want them to go, oh goodness, it's another week in the office. And on Friday, TGIF. I would like to try and think that we have an organization where folks bring themselves fully to work. Our values are aligned with their personal values. And Monday to Friday, they're happy to be here. Obviously, sometimes they would rather be other places. That's completely normal. But by and large, they're happy to be here. They're aligned with the mission. And this kind of thing is what powers us.
So then it seems like if you were to start this over, would you change the structure, or it works, it's good?
Well, circumstances and factors present in the economy and in the workplace today are actually quite different than they were 6 years ago. We started pre-COVID. Things are very different, like work from home and just how folks bring themselves to work. I wouldn't change anything fundamentally. What we have works now. Could we be better and tweak a few things? Absolutely. Could we stop doing a few small things? Absolutely. But fundamentally, I would have pretty much done the business the same way as we would have done. I mentioned earlier we did a small foray into consumer packaged goods for a year and a half. Some people say, man, that was lost time or lost money. And it's not true. We learned a lot of things when we were doing that. Putting food in consumers' mouths demands a lot of rigor with testing and certification and working with CFIA. And through some of those processes, we refined practices that we now do with respect to agricultural products. So there's not a lot that I would change, and we can learn from some of the small missteps in the past and use it to guide us going forward. But I think if we did a survey across the team members, they'd go, yeah, it works well.
Yeah, it's always there's always an evolution to any company. And I think for the most part, for most of them, so much of like where they start is not where they end up, right? A couple of years later. And so I love that journey that you shared, and that, you were a completely different business when you started. I can't believe it's been 6 years ago, right? Just the timeline to what it is now and the opportunity. And I wonder, like, if you could speak to us more about the impact that that you see and that you seek out in the work that you do with Cascadia, and maybe even like some of the most unexpected impact that you've sort of been able to witness to selling your product or manufacturing your product.
Sure. So, seaweed cultivation and conversion into value added products in North America is not a common industry or common sector. So, we've taken bits from aquaculture, finfish and shellfish. We've taken bits from processing. And on the island, for example, there's lots of processing of pulp and food and milk and breweries and things like that. And then the downstream aspects of sales is matching our product to our consumer, which in our case is big agriculture. We've wanted to make a positive impact at all steps, and we're vertically integrated. So my point was we had to do everything at every stage of the business to put it into effect. So we started and built a nursery, and then we understood how to build farms. We worked with our First Nations communities and our First Nations partners. I'll give you one example about the nurseries. We built a seaweed nursery for our purposes, for this company. Other folks came to us and said, hey, can we get some seed from you for our own seaweed farms? Knowing that there are other startups and small businesses whose whole business is seeds for seaweed, we'd say, no, don't buy from us. Buy from these other folks. Their business is supplying to people like you. I don't want to take their business away from them. So we always understand the ecosystem, and whether it's natural ecosystem or the human business ecosystem, we always know that everything we do has an impact on the ecosystem around us, and we try to do it better. And this is paid rewards. We use off-season fishermen to help us with planting and harvesting. And season to season, they're coming back with new innovations, and they're going, look, I think I've got a better way of doing it. So this positivity radiates outwards, positivity in a business sense. And this goes the same thing with processing. We take advantage of island companies that are doing work and seeing how we can adapt to what they do. So seaweed as it grows in the ocean is net positive benefit for the ecosystem. For processing, we're helping local businesses and local economies. And downstream, our product helps reduce the use of synthetic fertilizer, and it also helps the plant in times of abiotic stress, so drought or too much salinity in the soil. So at every step of the way, we have to take a decision that benefits the ecosystem in which we operate. One of the most interesting outcomes of this that I didn't expect is people actually get excited about what we're doing. And when we talk to investors and customers, they go, wow, that's so good. And it's partly because it's not something that's done a lot in North America. So it's a new sector, a new industry, simply a new thing for others, but they really get excited about it. Same thing with our First Nations partners, and the same thing with our customers. Our main competition in biostimulant is other folks around the world are using wild harvest. They get a license and they cut down what Mother Nature grows, generally in a very responsible manner. But as you know, with climate change and social license change, there's less support for mowing down what Mother Nature grows. And they're doing it in a responsible way, but they're not able to scale. So with us doing things in a responsible way, we can scale to meet demand. And by growing more seaweed, it's actually doing better for the ocean and better for the communities in which we operate. And that excitement, as I said, gets shared. That's one of the fun things. You can stop a conversation pretty quickly when someone says, what do? You go, I'm a seaweed farmer. And then you don't add any color to that. And you can say, what the heck is that? And then you tell them, and the most common response is, wow, that's cool. And then you can explain the positive benefits.
And so when you talk about, the benefits, I think those are all so important, because it's not just, singular, right? You're not just focusing on one outcome. I mean, how do you then, from your perspective, sort of measure some of this impact? Do you measure some of it? Do you measure just like the environmental impact or perhaps like the community or social outcomes? Are you doing that now? Are you thinking about some of that?
So we're a business, and one of the things we have to constantly remind team members and others is it's important for us to be a profitable business so that we can stay in existence. Yeah. And when we are in existence, then we can do the good things. But we've been doing the good things right out of the gate. We're a certified B Corp. We're a British Columbia Benefit Corp. And in our last Series A raise, we have 5 or 6 notable investors, one of them the World Wildlife Fund. And they've seen what we do and they've said, right, let's codify your benefits and ensure on a year-to-year basis that you're doing what you say you're doing and that it's getting better over time. So in the B Corp format and framework, there are rules and guidance, and there's reporting on that. Same as in British Columbia, a registered benefit corp. And then some of our partners are looking at specific things like how many jobs are you creating, how much carbon or nitrogen, what's your impact, how is that measured, what are you doing with respect to increasing the amount of natural habitat for kelp forests. Is about 20, 25 things. It's important, though, to balance that with what I said about being a profitable business. If that's all we did is report, then we wouldn't be able to do the other job of making quality products and selling them at a profit to the market. So we do have to balance it, but it's always there. We've done a life cycle analysis of our carbon footprint. How much gas do you use in a truck to get to a location, to get to the farm? Are you using products that are less harmful for the environment? And then in and of itself, our own business, putting in a seaweed farm, we liaise with government departments to ensure that the habitat that we're putting the farm into is not being negatively impacted. One of our divisions is called Nature-Based Solutions, which is different than commercially making seaweed for agriculture products. And it's all about environmental systems. We have a project in Kenya working with female seaweed farmers there to improve their lifestyles and their incomes. We did a project on the integration of salmon with our seaweed farms with a lot of telemetry, a lot of data to show how are things interacting with us. So we're increasing the amount of data and we're increasing real measurement over time, obviously with the goal to continue to get better at it.
Of course. And I appreciate that too, like the reality of, you are trying to build a business and all of the impact measurement is important, but it won't happen if you can't build the business, right? So, and that's why I personally appreciate, the Benefit Corp and especially like B Corp certification because it pushes you, right? Like there's new certification, sort of their new evolved certification is coming out and it pushes you to be an overall better business, right? So, thank you for sharing all of those, all of the various projects and the ways that you're thinking and sort of measuring and monitoring some of this work.
What about your work and collaborative efforts with Indigenous communities? I know in British Columbia along the coast, a lot of that area is owned and managed by Indigenous peoples. So what relationship do you have with them? Is there a specific story you want to share, lessons learned? Feel free to expand. I'm really curious.
Right. So in our areas of operation from the southern tip of Vancouver Island, which is where I'm located today, right up to the northern edge of British Columbia coastline, Prince Rupert, which is very close to the Alaskan border, there's hundreds of Indigenous communities. And one of the things that I try to do right out of the gate is recognize each community as a separate, distinct, and unique community. So what is important and works for the Sayet will be different for the Sashot and the Uchucklasit and the Ahousasit and the Metlakatla. So the first thing is we don't treat them as an amorphous lump of Indigenous communities. Every nation has a different leadership style, has a different business style, and has a very different approach to the way they want to interact with businesses. So it's partner by partner by partner. And it's worked very well. we first identify areas where a seaweed farm makes sense from a number of principles like bathymetric data and currents, and whether there's freshwater incursions and proximities to ports. And then we talk to the First Nations community. This is our business model. Are you interested in participating, and can we find a way to work together? And that has led to the current partnerships, which are strong. We're in the renewal stage right now. We're tweaking a few things that make it a better partnership, and it's worked well. And in return, we've learned things. There's a lot of sayings amongst the different communities, like when the tide is out, the table's set, referring to their traditional use of what's in the sea for food. Take only what you need is another one that's very important and not necessarily common in Western cultures. That was something we've heard quite a lot. Multi-generational impacts. All of our First Nations communities talk about 7 generations. They don't care. Of course, they care what's going on today, but they're also very interested in knowing how it's going to affect 7 generations out. I mentioned our selection process for seaweed farm locations. We'll say, yeah, this looks like a really good place, and for a variety of reasons, we think we could put a seaweed farm there. And then we'll hear things from elders that, you mean like where the whales like to hang out? And you go, that's not on any charts. So you learn a lot of things. So it's truly a blend between modern science, business, which First Nations adopt in their own right anyway, and then with the traditional knowledge. We've had some good experiences with their observations on how putting in seaweed farms rehabilitates location, brings back flora and fauna they hadn't seen for years. And that's why they support what we do. They're almost like in individual communities, rangers or guardians or observers to make sure that we are walking our talk. And we say, yeah, this is good for the ocean. It's going to make a positive difference. There's always the aspect that they want to see the proof, and it's there. And we've talked to youth in the communities, and they recognize instantly that seaweed farming, green practices, reforestation is what they've been hearing from their nation members and their elders forever. And they're seeing that we're actually doing it. So there's a lot of excitement, and there's a lot of interest for them to start doing some of these practices on their own as well. And we like to try and support that where it makes sense for both sides of the deal.
This kind of goes back to the question around like business organizational structure. So given these partnerships and collaborative efforts, is there a spin-off enterprise here that makes sense so that they could have some ownership, or is that just really not the model? Or is it like, no, they're more of a service provider and that makes sense?
It's multifaceted. And again, like I said about each community being unique, the same way how they want to approach the business. In some cases, they're landlords and they rent the water lot that's in their territory. Some of them we employ nation members because there's folks in their communities that want to work in the business. They have a long and rich tradition of being on the water fishing. So our main fishing enterprise that we use is a First Nations owned business. Like anyone, there's an opportunity to purchase shares in the company and become a shareholder of Cascadia Seaweed, which some of them are looking at. And in the fullness of time, I would like to see a model similar to what happened on the east coast of Canada. The lobster industry on the east coast of Canada is now 50% owned by First Nations, 50% owned by a large food group, and it's very successful. I could see one of our long-term goals to have Cascadia Seaweed owned by a collection, a cooperative of First Nations, or half First Nations, half an ag company. The First Nations would do everything upstream, understand the water and the product that they're used to, the seaweed, and then having a partnership with an off-taker, a large off-taker, that understands then that both sides of that equation are completely vested in it. And it would make a lot of sense. We know about Canada's stance on Indigenous ownership and rights and titles. This kind of thing would fit very well in with that. So there's an opportunity for full First Nations ownership downstream. It's a very careful path we have to walk because, as I mentioned, we're a certified corporation. We have shareholders. We have a really strong set of shareholder agreements, and we're a business. So any practice going forward would reflect how that works in the business world. But there's many, many examples of First Nations taking meaningful ownership of or ownership percentages in businesses, whether they be pipelines or shipyards or agriculture. This is another one that would make sense. And again, if it's of interest to them, we'll have that dialogue. If it's not of interest to the individual communities, then it's not of interest to them. But it's an ongoing conversation all the time. Myself and the team members that are out in the water, we're always discussing, updating, meeting. It's a pretty active relationship we have with our partners and our partner farms.
I think that's probably, very unique in the sense that you are fluid and you're always looking to figure out what is the best sort of arrangement or the best partnership or the best way of working together to actually ensure that, the work gets done and that there is this sort of resiliency and thriving that happens in community, which I think is really unique and interesting and is a model that I think probably more companies should actually be exploring as they work with various communities, whether they're in a town or a city or with Indigenous peoples.
Right, and it's also important to realize that Indigenous communities are very busy and sometimes under capacity. They have the same challenges as other communities, but there's added challenges of employment for their youth and housing and clean water and medicine and access and all those things. We're just a tiny little aspect, and we don't go in there and go, "Hey, pay attention to our needs." We make sure we try to be respectful, and when there's a challenge or an opportunity, we can get the right person's attention. Sometimes it's the chief counselor, sometimes it's a business manager, sometimes it's a fisheries manager, but to get the right person's attention and find a way to make what we need to get done fit into their very busy schedules.
And so how do you, as you grow, as you continue to build Cascadia, the business, the B Corp, and as you have shareholders within the company, how do you make sure that the company remains mission first as you scale the business? Traditionally, we've seen other companies sort of struggle here, right, in this sort of space. Like, how do we make sure that purpose continues to remain and be strong within the company?
Well, the biggest owner and shepherd of values and that is the team members. We have in our main office in Sydney, there's probably 8 or 10 folks that show up every day. And of those 8 or 10, 3 or 4 of them get out to the outstations as often as they can. We all get together twice a year for a team meeting here in Sydney, and it's an open forum. We do some, getting to know you and some games and then some exercises and then some tough dialogues. I think the answer to the question is on a daily basis, if I come up or someone else comes up with a bad idea, there's going to be a team member that will go, "Yeah, I don't think that's what we want to do. I don't like that." This is very refreshing to see that the folks in the company really, truly care about what they're doing and why they're doing it. And if I walked out and said, "Okay, we're going to start making plastic this and carbon," there would be an uproar. I remember in the early days, we were up island, and we had the opportunity to go to the beach for 15 minutes between jobs, and we drove our truck down by the beach. There was 4 team members. We walked out into this beautiful beach, Pachina Bay. It's about 2 kilometers of just flat, beautiful, sandy beach. And there was a lot of plastic and other detritus around there. And one of the guys said, "Okay, before we go, let's clean this up." And I went, yeah, get back in the truck. And they all stopped and they go, "No, we got to clean this up before we go." And we spent an hour. And we filled all kinds of bags with plastic and bottles and stuff and took it so that it was properly disposed and did leave a positive impact. And it's that kind of constant attention by team members and reminding each other that we have a mission, we want to be aligned with best practices, and we're going to do it. So within the company, we don't get away with things that aren't in alignment. It's the team members that ensure that we stay true.
I love that. It's like the culture, right? Like it gives everybody agency to sort of lead with impact, which I think is so important. And culture is when you scale, especially.
And it is. And one of the things, and you'll see it in management books, you'll see it in podcasts and discussions, it really does have to start from the top. It's not easy, and it constantly has to be repeated. And this is why I say team members, not employees. And it's a little tiny thing. It's not kitschy. It's everybody's part of the team, and it has to be completely reinforced. If people say, I'm an employee, we don't want employees. We want people that are bought in. Yes, there's salaries and there's benefits and there's all the usual structure things, but something as simple as a label like that makes a difference.
Yeah, yeah. Language is powerful.
When you speak of scale and you speak of all of this positive, impactful work, I'm curious to hear more about your fundraising journey. So I don't know where the right place is for you to start when you describe the fundraising journey. I think for a lot of other listeners in this space, it's always the most challenging piece, especially if it's not something that they've done before or it's not something that they have expertise in-house to scale. What I'm really trying to figure out is like, how have you gone through the fundraising journey? Where are you currently at? And has there been this compelling reason for going down this path in the way that you have that's made you, not sway or not look for other investment opportunities or buyout package, whatever it is. Like
Sure.
I kind of want to hear the whole picture.
Sure. So when we started the business in the very, very, very early days, it was 3 partners. Let's start a business. Right. How much money do we need? What's a company right out of the gate worth? And we did a lot of research and we came up with a number. And we said, this makes sense for a value of a company. And how much money do we need to get it going? And we decided that it was around $500,000. And we did initially the friends and family route. And we filled that in about 2.5 weeks. And it was all about growing seaweed. We're going to cultivate seaweed. And folks got really excited about that. They were patient investors. They knew that their money was going to be at risk. It was a new idea, and they put their faith in us, and we raised $500,000. In the intervening years, we raised another $1.5 million by adding on to the friends and family round and starting to get a little bit more traditional investors. About 20 months ago, we launched our Series A with a target of $5 million. Leading the charge was the CFO, Rob Napoli, and myself, and finding impact organizations, ocean funds, food funds, family offices who would align with our story. And we were successful in an early close of $4 million in August of our Series A raise. I mentioned the World Wildlife Fund. There was a family office out of Chicago. There were some other funds in the States and some overseas funds that liked the alignment of all the things we've talked about. The mission, working with coastal and First Nations communities, positively impacting the ocean, and delivering a product that was beneficial to agriculture, helping ensure food security. It's all about food security and just the total package. One of the stumbling blocks, or one of the metrics that the later stage Series A folks said was, do you have product market fit, i.e. sales? And it was fortunate that the timing around the summer and the fall of last year was that we started to get traction selling our product in California, very tough market. And we sold a few thousand, tens of thousands of liters of our product, and we demonstrated real market traction. And that's what sealed the deal. Now, from a corporate and team perspective, I then had to help lead the organization from being not penny pinching, but really, really, really tight on the financing, almost payroll to payroll, to saying, right, folks, we're now funded. Let's make decisions with a different light, in that we do have the money we need to carry out our plans of expansion and expansion of sales and expansion of production and expansion of cultivation, but still doing it in a profitable manner. And that was a big shift. And folks have now gotten through that. Of our raise, we're doing a final $3 million raise. And we now have things proven, the ability to make a product, the ability to sell a product demand, and as we talked about earlier, still staying true to your values. So it's a bit of a mix in that we care about the ocean, we care about our communities, but we still have to make something for less than we sell it. So you can't be a hardcore capitalist. You have to still take all those things into account. And I think it's a model that a lot of businesses want to emulate and want to do now as well. You can't be a single purpose. You can't be out there just to make money. It doesn't work for the company, it doesn't work for the community, and it doesn't work for the marketplace. So the fundraising has evolved. How you get a Series A closed? Hundreds of pitches, hundreds. And the story was consistent with all the audiences. Sometimes we might emphasize a slight bit more about the environment, or a slight bit more about the communities we work in, or a slight bit more about the product. But by and large, the pitch deck stayed the same, the story stayed the same, and if you found an aligned investor, it made a lot of sense. One of the things that was perhaps, maybe it was disappointing, is things like environment, social, and governance didn't matter to some people, and they're the people that didn't come on board as investors. We highlighted all the positive things, and we said we put emphasis on that, and you're an ESG organization, so there should be an alignment. And they would go, yeah, where's the sales? So there wasn't a lot of value attributed to some of the softer things, even though some folks had a stance that said, this is what we stand for. And in the end of the day, they may not have. So the investors that did come on board, good named organizations, they are walking the talk, and they understand it's going to take patient capital to make this work. And that's what we want. Family offices have led the charge on that. WWF, we're really happy they came. They have a fantastic brand. And you talked earlier about metrics. They're an organization where you really want to ensure that you do what you say you do, and it's in line with the goals of the planet. You know, the old triple bottom line, people, planet, profit. We just have different names for it now, but this is what we do. We care about our impact on the planet. We care about the people we work with and work for. And of course, we have to make money to stay in business, to be able to do the good things. And our pool of investors understand that. It's patient capital, and they're giving us time to get to the stage where they hope to see some return, not just on the good for what we do, but also from a financial perspective as well.
What about searching for investors cross-border? It sounds like you've had more success south of the border than in Canada. Is that true?
We've had a great support from the Canadian and provincial governments with respect to grants that aligned with programs. So we're thankful for that. We've done some projects with the Canadian government, the Agriculture Department, the Fisheries Department, and we're thankful for that. We have family offices in the States, which for whatever reason are more aligned perhaps to this kind of work. The United States is bigger. There's more family offices, and the ability to find ones that are aligned with our mission is better. Potato Impact Partners out of Singapore is a big supporter of ours. So I don't know what the statistics are, whether it's one third, but we like to be a global company. So yes, there is a lot of investment south of the border and overseas, as well as in Canada. And now we're in the phase with the agriculture products and regenerative agriculture and ensuring food security that we're hoping to get more attention from ag-based companies that understand the business of what we do and are in discussions with folks like that now for the final $3 million, which could be a blend of debt and equity. Now being in market, now having revenue, now seeing customer numbers increase, it changes the dynamic of who likes to support the company. And we may be able to do some of it now with different forms of debt and or some of our Indigenous partners, because there's funds available to help them get involved in businesses too.
That's great.
It's good to have a blend of investors, because it ensures that the various things you stand for and do are in fact being addressed.
Yeah, I mean that's a great strategy for investment into your business. That, I mean, often companies don't consider that, right? They're just trying to like fill that cap table. Okay, to close us off, last question. What does Cascadia Seaweed look like in a decade from now in an ideal world?
So from a product perspective, we have the opportunity to scale at a reasonable pace and make a lot of biostimulant or liquid kelp extract, which, as I mentioned, goes into fields alongside traditional fertilizer, and it's a great way to reduce the use of fertilizers and make plants grow more. In the world, it's a $3 billion market. In North America, it's a $1 billion market. And a third of it, $300 million in the US, is seaweed or seaweed-based biostimulants. In 10 years, I would like to form a meaningful percentage of that market, almost like Intel Inside. Our biostimulants is great as a suspension liquid or carrier for other things that farmers and growers need to put in their crops, herbicides, pesticides, and other fertilizers. Seaweed is a great way to get that into the soil, into the plant in a very beneficial way. So I would like to be North America's largest or second largest. There's a very big player on the East Coast, a good company. I would like to be North America's largest supplier of seaweed-derived extracts. We have a new plant going in Prince Rupert. It's a container port, so it has great market access. And I would like to have that Indigenous ownership that I talked about earlier. It just makes sense. So in 10 years, Cascadia Seaweed is thriving. They're doing 4 million liters of biostimulant a year into the North American and overseas markets. It's Indigenous owned, and it's still doing what it said it was going to do when we started out. So those B Corp aspects and Benefit Corp aspects are alive and well. And, of course, that we've made the ocean cleaner and healthier with reduced acidification, enhanced oxygen, more habitat, sequestration of carbon, all the positive benefits, and our product still positively benefits ag and food security. And it's a realizable dream. It's important to have a North Star to lead to. So we take steps on a day-to-day basis to stay in business, to stay profitable, and work towards that outcome.
I love that. Thank you so much. I can't wait for that to become a reality. I think the work you do is so important for communities and obviously for the planet and the ocean. So thank you, Michael. It's been...
Sorry, I was just going to say, we do
Yes.
work at a fast pace. We talk about seaweed years like dog years. One seaweed year is about 7 regular years. It's a really fast-moving sector, and we can't wait, and the planet can't wait for the benefits that could accrue.
I love that.
Thank
Seaweed
you.
years. We're taking that. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure. Nice chatting with you.
As we wrap up today's episode, we hope you're leaving with insights that ignite a spark within you. At the core of every story we cover lies the undeniable truth. What truly drives impact is the relentless pursuit of change, paired with a deep commitment to the greater good. We're always reminded that making a mark on the world is not an easy task and isn't just about breaking through barriers. It's about thinking differently about what sustainability means in our ever-changing world and what is possible in creating it. Thank you so much for joining us on Ideas for Impact, where rebels with a cause redefine the meaning of what is possible. For more episodes that challenge the norm, follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, always dive deeper into our journey with us at ideasforimpactagency.com. Until next time, friends, keep pushing the boundaries of what is possible.